Welcome to episode 34 of the LAN Partners Podcast. I'm your host, Connor, and I got Dave with me.
Howdy ho!
Yep, no Matt this week. This is our final episode of the year of 2017. So for today, we're not going to do any reviews, no news, no discussion topics. We're just going to do a big top 10 of 2017 for our own personal gaming. I mean, this year has been just such a crazy year of gaming with all these new releases like Breath of the Wild, the Switch, Odyssey, Horizon Zero Dawn, just to name a few. It's just been a big year. So, and with all those games coming out, we have also been playing a lot of games that have come out in the past couple of years. 2016, I even played some games from later than that. So our list for this year is just personal top 10, or for today, completely personal top 10, any games that we played in the year of 2017. We are three gamers who have full-time jobs, families, and other hobbies. Our goal for this podcast is to give suggestions of games for people who don't have a lot of time to game, so that precious hour or two you have isn't wasted. We talk about new and old games so you can find the best game that fits your style. Please download the podcast by Apple app, Stitcher, Google Play for you Android users, or go on iTunes and hit subscribe. That way you get our weekly episodes uploaded to you every Wednesday. If you have questions, discussion topics, or list ideas, please message us on Facebook, send an email, thelandpartners@gmail.com, or leave a comment. Let's go ahead and get into it. Dave, I'm excited about this.
I'm pretty stoked, man. We played, the whole theory behind the LAN Partners is we play those old games that, 2 years, 3 years later that, we don't want to pay $60 new, and my list is reflective of that.
Yeah, there are plenty of games on here that are not of 2017, and they're at the top of my list, the top half of my list. And so I'm really excited about this because, yeah, like you said, this is what the LAN Partners represent is we play old games because they're cheap and we have the time for them now. We don't want to spend that money. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Matt is not with us here today, but we do have his list. We will share that at the end of the episode after Dave and I kind of go through our top 10 of the year. How about you start us off with your number 10?
All right. So my number 10 is a sleeper, I think, this year that a lot of people don't really consider a 2017 game because it's just so under the radar. And it might have actually come out earlier on PC, but I bought it for the Nintendo Switch, and my wife and I had a blast with it. My number 10 is Overcooked, and it is an extremely fun just co-op game. It's pure co-op. You don't battle your neighbor. You don't do anything like that. It's you and either 1, 2, or 3 of your friends all against the clock, just making these meals. The mechanics are awesome. The gameplay is sweet. It's like a really awesome team version of Diner Dash, which I also used to play all the time on my DS. It's just one of those like addictive, simple games that feels more complicated than it is, and I love the teamwork involved. So Overcooked was my number 10.
Is Diner Dash and Overcooked not of the same developer or anything like that?
I don't believe so. I don't believe so. And they in some ways they're a lot alike, and in some ways they're totally different. I like to think of Overcooked as like what Diner Dash would be like behind the kitchen counter, because Diner Dash, you're serving the food, and Overcooked, you are creating it. So it's kind of like the feeling I got from it.
I actually played Overcooked with Matt at his house. He has it on PS4, I think. That game's awesome. It is a lot of fun. It gets you thinking. You're really using a lot of teamwork, talking to each other. It's a ton of fun. That's a good spot at number 10.
Yeah, nothing really hits you quite as hard as when your soup is about to burn and neither of you can get there because the level like shifts or something, right, and you're both running for the pot, like trying to make sure it doesn't spoil. Oh man,
I remember the one level where it kind of breaks in half, and one guy's down below, one guy's up top. It's like, throw me bread while I'm down here, and I'll start cooking up the patties while I'm down here. And then once it gets back, then you start sending all the food out. That's a good game.
Rated.
I didn't you don't really hear about it being on the Switch very much. I feel like that's a really good Switch like party game. You have a bunch of friends around.
I feel like Nintendo would have developed that game. It feels like a Nintendo developed game. It really does.
Yeah, that's a good spot for number 10. Okay, so my number 10, this, I think, of my list, the 10 spot was the hardest one to fill because I have so many games that I played this year that on the outside of my 10, I have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, about 9 games that did not make the top 10 that I played of this year. So I have 9 games that I had to between I had to choose to get that time spot, but I went with Star Tropics from the NES Classic. You may be like, what? I reviewed this game on the podcast. I don't remember what the episode number, but this is a great game. For a Nintendo game off the NES Classic, it's got so much more to this game than like a Mario game. It's got so much story. There's aliens. There's this foreign world. You're on this island, and then you're in a submarine. The way it plays, it feels like it's a game that would come out this year that an indie developer would make, and they give you an 8-bit game, and you'd be like, wow, like this game's pretty cool. Like that's what it feels like. It feels like history. It felt so ahead of its time, and I really enjoyed this game. So if you're listeners out there, if you have Star Tropics on your NES Classic, play it. You can also download it on your 3DS.
Oh, I know it was on 3DS. It's interesting.
It's on the eShop. Isn't all of eShop or the Nintendo eShop? Isn't that all 3DS and Wii U?
Yeah. There's like slight differences between the eShops, but I for one, I'm not surprised you put that game on your list, but I was really surprised when you prioritized Star Tropics over some of those NES Classic games. If I would have thought a little harder, I would have guessed that game made the list. But
yeah, it was awesome, and I wanted to play it purely just because I'm like, we were messing around one day. Like Matt got the NES Classic first, so I was playing it at his house, and we just messed around with that game for 10 minutes, and I'm like, this game's actually kind of cool. There's little puzzles, and the action's fun. So I was digging that game. So that is my number 10. What is your number 9?
My number 9 is Grand Theft. No, I'm kidding. My number 9 is Tomb Raider, and
Tomb Raider.
I had this game for free on Xbox with Games with Gold. They gave away Tomb Raider, the definitive edition, and I was kind of hesitant to play it because I'd played the original Tomb Raiders for the PlayStation, and I played, I think, maybe like the first one and the second one, and then I don't know, Tomb Raider never really vibed with me. And then with all the success of like Uncharted and all those other, Indiana Jones ripoff things, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to play this game because it's like an action movie. Like I had just gotten over playing Titanfall 2 at the time. And I was like, I want some more action. I want like a third person perspective. I'm going to try this game out. And it made my top 10. It was a really good game. I really, really appreciate the changes that were made to the original formula. It's just a really good game. I'm actually looking really forward to trying out Rise of the Tomb Raider because I've not tried that one. So I'm hoping they give that one away too.
Yeah, we also reviewed Tomb Raider on the podcast, so go back and listen to that. I played that game last year, so that does not qualify for my 2017. But yes, it's a really good game. There's some flaws. We talked about it, but it gives you that. And you said you were craving that action adventure. You weren't really looking for anything else, and that's what they give you. They don't give you an RPG or a really deep story element to it, but it just gives you, it kind of scratches that itch, and I completely agree with you. That is a really good game, and I have not played Rise either, but it's starting to kind of creep up on my games to play list, so maybe early next year I'll get to it. We'll see how my winter break goes.
And I want to be clear with our listeners, we are not talking about the Xbox One launch title Rise that we'll probably never play. If you haven't played it already, you're not missing out on much. I actually had to watch my buddy Jamie play a little bit of that game. And he doesn't tune into the podcast because he hates friendship. But if he did and he heard me say this, he'd be like, oh, yeah, there was that day you were watching. Dave was watching me, and I just did not enjoy myself watching that game even. It was hard to get through, very repetitive. Like the assassination animations were cool for like 2 minutes. I don't know. Have you played that game, Connor?
No, and I don't intend to.
Yeah, let's not talk about it on the top 10. I feel like we're muddying the top 10 a little bit.
All right, moving on. My number 9 is Titanfall 2. This game was, you played it first, and Matt played it, and Tony played it, and I played it. I don't know if I was last or not, but yeah, the Titanfall bug kind of caught all of us at the same time, and it was a really fun game. It was a ton of fun.
So unexpected.
Yeah.
So unexpected.
That was the biggest thing. When you played it and you kept saying how great this game is, how great it is, I'm like, okay, like he's getting a little caught up in the moment right now. Like let's calm him down. I'm gonna go ahead and play this game. And yeah, you weren't wrong. I mean, it's still a lot of fun. It's a first person shooter, but it's still a ton of fun. There was a lot of cool sequences. I know there's that one part that we talked about. The time part, and I don't want to go too much detail, but that whole time portion, that was really, really cool. So that is my number 9, Titanfall 2. So moving on to number 8.
Yeah, my number 8 has an 8 in the title, baby. Nintendo Switch re-releasing this game. First time that I actually had all the DLC, and you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe for the Nintendo Switch. Fantastic game. All the DLC is really cool to have. Like I said, I never had it for the Wii U. I know it was released for the Wii U earlier, but the re-release I feel is special because you get those 2 items that mimic Double Dash, like you and I had talked about several times before, which in my opinion makes it a totally different game. And then you have the added battle modes, which is also making that game a totally different game. So it's not just like, a little bit of new content. It's a pretty healthy amount of new content, especially for those of us that didn't have the DLC. So number 8 is 8 of Mario Kart.
Well, my question to you about that, I know we talked about this before, and I can't remember if I got a clear answer on it or not, is that if the items, how you could have 2 items now with that update. I don't own Mario Kart 8 Deluxe for the Switch. I only own the Wii U one, which doesn't have the 2 items. Can you... I know it's only one racer because in Double Dash you had 2 racers and you could swap between the 2. Like if you have Diddy and Toad, Diddy's driving and he has the banana, you can switch and put Diddy on the back so you can put down the banana. Can you switch the items on the go in the Deluxe, or do you not know?
I don't believe so. I think it locks the order. I mean, to be honest, I've never actually tried because I get excited and I just launch items right when I see them. So, maybe that would help me be better at that game, but I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I don't think so because there's not too many buttons to press on the Nintendo Switch controllers, and you can play with the half controller, the half Joy-Con, and I don't recall a button for it, so I'm guessing not.
Strategy, Dave. Strategy. This is why you're not very good. So my number 8 is DMC Devil May Cry, the 2015 release. I played this really, really early on in the year, almost to the point where it was over winter break, like creeping into the new year. So I played most of it in 2017, so I put it in my 2017. But yeah, this game was awesome. It was a ton of fun. It has that Bayonetta feel to it where it's just kind of action, mashing buttons, but the story was all there. The story didn't sync with me completely like Bayonetta did, where those were the big differences, and the combat wasn't as good. But I thought Devil May Cry was a extremely solid game. I have not gotten to a review yet of that on the podcast, but I will in the future. But big news out of Devil May Cry is they're actually remastering all the original ones, and they're going to launch that in March. I'm really excited to play that.
They deserve it. Yeah. They deserve it, man. Like, talk about a series with pedigree. I remember going to my buddy's house when I was in high school, and he was telling me about this game he had, and he's like, "Oh, it's so great! You got to play it. You're like this dude who's also like a devil, and you have like these sweet guns, and you get all these power ups." And I'm like, "Yeah, this game sounds really cheesy and terrible, but I'm gonna go over to his house and play it, like whatever." And I played this game at his house, and I kid you not, I owned a copy of Devil May Cry literally that week. I absolutely had to have it. And that was the first one. I've played all the first 3, even through like the dual character one. I think that was the second one. And all 3 of them are just really good, solid beat 'em ups, like just solid games. So I appreciate your, was it number 8?
Yeah, this is number 8. This Devil May Cry that I played was actually a relaunch. Like, it wasn't anything related to the old Devil May Cries that you're talking about. I don't know if you're aware of this or not. But, yeah, this DMC Devil May Cry is a whole new... So it was a completely new origin story to the main character, and I'm blanking on his name right now.
Well, it's not Dante, because you got the guy who looked like all emo, and everyone went crazy because they said that he looked like a goth kid.
Yeah.
And they got a lot of heat for that from like the old Devil May Cry fans, because Dante, I mean, he's a well-loved character. Like, anyone who played Devil May Cry had no choice but to have like a connection with Dante. He was just like a dude. Like, he's a dude that just slays evil.
And this was the first time I got exposed to Devil May Cry, because I've never played any of the old ones, believe it or not. I've never touched a Devil May Cry, so this was my first experience, and I really enjoyed it. I'm really looking forward to getting to that remaster pack that comes out in March, hopefully. Hopefully it doesn't get delayed, but that is my number 8, DMC Devil May Cry. So your number 7.
All right, my number 7, I understand, was, again, a game released last year, but I did not give the campaign or the multiplayer really a whole ton of time until this year. I'm talking about Call of Duty Infinite Warfare / the remaster. And the reason I grouped those games together is because they forced me to buy them together.
Yeah.
So if I wanted one, I had to buy the other one. So I'm going to go with that one. The campaign was pleasantly much better than I expected. I did not expect much from that campaign. There's just the guy's name, the lead character is Nick Reyes or something like that, and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be so corny. I'm gonna hate this, and it was actually really entertaining. But it was entertaining not in like you're gonna fall in love with the characters and be invested. It was more of a action movie like Tomb Raider. It's another action movie, but this time in first person. And the reason it places above it is because, oh, dear sweet baby zombie mode. What a great mode in that game. It was the theme park one with like the 80s vibe, and you had, David Hasselhoff coming from the sky and helping you slay zombies, and it was just oh, it's real, and it's everything you could imagine. I have so many good things to say about the zombie mode, and without the zombie mode, it probably wouldn't have made my top 10, but the combination of the local multiplayer, which you and I have played, and the zombie mode puts that in my top 10 for sure.
The Call of Duty 4 remaster I legitimately wanted, but I didn't want to have to pay for the other Call of Duty, so I didn't end up getting it. Because Call of Duty 4 I really enjoyed. I know I'm not the biggest Call of Duty fan, and I'm pretty open about that, but Call of Duty 4 is where it all started for me, and I wanted to relive that and experience that game again and get back on that multiplayer, but they did not allow me to because I couldn't buy it separately. So I was like, no go on Call of Duty.
It affected sales too. That's not their highest selling Call of Duty game, and I think it's because people were upset.
It was a bad move on their part. I get that they wanted people to buy because they knew that Call of Duty 4 was a selling point, so bundle it up with the whatever one they bundled it with, Infinite Warfare.
Because that Infinite Warfare, if you remember, was the most disliked trailer on YouTube ever for a video game.
But then it sold like crazy.
It sold like crazy because of the remaster.
That's true.
I mean, it was smart in some ways, but then also with people like us who are not diehard Call of Duty fans, it rubbed us the wrong way and made us feel like, they were good old cash grab Activision that you could just predict every move they make.
Mm-hmm.
So,
all right, moving on to my number 7. If you notice the theme here, so far I'm at number 7, and I have not said a single 2017 title yet. This is the kind of quality of games that I'm just now getting to. But my number 7 is BioShock Infinite from the BioShock collection. I talked about BioShock 1 and how great it was when it first came out, first played it in 2007. And then BioShock 2, terrible, don't even want to talk about it. But then BioShock Infinite comes out, and this game is great. I loved it. The story was just so... It just kept me thinking the entire time. Even at the end, I remember sitting there thinking after I finished it, and just like, I don't know what just happened, but it was awesome. I got to think about what just happened here. It was just such a great story, and the intertwining between BioShock 1 and all the little Easter eggs. It's just there's just something about BioShock. The way they tell the story is unlike any other first-person shooter or really any other game. Just the great storytelling that it cannot be matched, and it had a hold on me for quite a while. So that's my number 7. I know you have not the greatest opinion on BioShock.
Yeah, I'm staying quiet on this one. Especially the first one in the PC port. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Really low opinions on that one, but...
And that's all right. But BioShock Infinite is my number 7. I will be reviewing that in the upcoming episodes, so be on the lookout for that. What is your number 6 game? Now, before you give your number 6... You're getting into the territory right now where I know there's about 4 or 5 games where I'm like, I don't know how he's going to sort out these 4 or 5 games. Let's see how he does. So let's hear your number 6.
Number 6, Bubble Bobble for the NES. No, I'm kidding. Yeah.
NES Classic Legend.
I wish I could say Bubble Bobble. I want that game again. So if somebody's listening, one of our random, 8 listeners a week, if you work for Bubble Bobble, please give me Bubble Bobble in some way, shape, or form. Anyway, my number 6 is Destiny 2. And let me preface this by saying I am absolutely disgusted with Bungie right now. Completely and absolutely disgusted with them. The Curse of Osiris DLC that just hit actually removed features for people who did not pay for the DLC. It locked things behind the Osiris content. Wow. So if you paid $60 for Destiny 2 and you did not buy their ridiculously money-grabbing expansion season pass, you, sir, got features taken out of your game. It's honestly the most disgusting thing I've ever heard in a video game, and the only reason this game makes it onto my list at number 6 is because my initial playthrough was just so good feeling. There's something that Bungie just understands about first-person shooters on a console that nobody else understands when it comes to like the feel of a Bungie shooter, just like the feel of it. Now, I'm not talking about the story. Bungie is not by any means masterful storytellers. They're not amazing ethically with their DLC, their RNG drops, and their monetization model that's maybe one of the most disgusting in the industry at this point. But hot dog, they make a game, and it felt good to play. And I wish the PvP wasn't so filled with unfair advantages for players and unbalanced, because I really wanted to play the multiplayer of that game. But Destiny 2 is at my 6. I had to throw a shade at it though, because I mean, how can you not? So disgusting.
Explain. Give me the highlights of that one more time. What is the deal?
What's the what?
You have to pay for the pack, but you get
the
features.
DLC came out. Okay, so let's say you bought the game. Let's say you bought the game and I bought the DLC. When the DLC came out, we used to be able to play certain modes together, certain raids and certain events. Mm-hmm. When the DLC launched, it got locked behind that content, so you lost the ability to even play those, while I got extra bonus content in the ones that I already had. Explain that to me. That's not an expansion. That is a reduction. That's what that is.
Sounds like
it's called a reduction pack for people who didn't buy the expansion.
Sounds like Battlefield 2.
Oh, man.
Or Battlefront 2. Sorry, not Battlefield 2.
Battlefront 2. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with these companies, man. Thank goodness for 343.
Make a quality product. That Halo 5, man. Just legendary.
It's just free Okay, think about their business model. Free DLC. You've not had to pay for one map. You have not had to pay for one extra ounce of anything. They just gave it to you because they respect you.
Yeah.
How many developers can you say nowadays, like whether you like the original Halo trilogy or 343, Halo 4 and 5 games, regardless of which one you like better, there is no denying that 343 is probably one of the most morally correct developers that I've ever encountered in gaming. It definitely isn't Bungie. Bungie makes me sick. EA makes me sick. Ubisoft makes me want to just vomit all over being sick already. But 343 is like with Valve, 343, Valve, and Respawn are just these little glimmers of light, in this sea of just really disgusting monetization that's happening nowadays.
Respawn.
Yeah, that's new.
I'm all in support of the let's give our fans what they want free of charge. Let's show them our appreciation and give them something good. All right, before we go on a crazy tangent about developers and microtransactions, let's press on with our lists here. Now we're getting to the nitty gritty. My number 6 is Wolfenstein New Order. This is the first Wolfenstein game in the series, and that's coming in at my number 6. I love the setup of this game into the New Colossus, which is the sequel to this game that we talked about the last 2 episodes. But New Order set the foundation. It is a wonderfully told story about Nazis winning the World War II. You're living in a Nazi-filled world, and you're just trying to survive and overcome, trying to overcome that defeat of the United States losing the war and just going through that. And it's just an awesome game. Just so much action, great story, and that's really what the highlight of this game is, just the storytelling and the just wonderfully developed story that leads right into New Colossus perfectly, and all the story arcs linked together. I just love New Order, and I'll talk about it more once I get to New Colossus on my list, and everyone should know New Colossus is on my list coming up here. So, Dave, what is your number 5?
Well, I want to preface this by saying I have nothing but just pure love in my heart for every single game on my top 5, developers included. My number 5 is indeed the myth, the legend, Titanfall 2. I fell in love with this game. That from the second that I played the first boss in the campaign, I started texting you guys and saying, dudes, this is something special. And we did a review on Titanfall 2, so I highly urge people to go back and take a listen to that, because I mean, it's a game that I don't think you should pass up. So I won't spoil anything from the review. Go back and listen.
And those of you who are saying like, no, it's probably not that good. It's a first-person shooter, Call of Duty-ish. It's not. The story is great. It's a really good campaign, and I highly recommend going and playing that game for sure. Especially, it's probably $15 by now. Cannot be that much.
Yeah, it's got to be, especially with some of these sales coming up. You can probably wait for the next sale right after Christmas. I bet you it'll be $20. It's worth 20 for sure.
Yeah. My number 5 is Yakuza 0. This was the prequel to the already developed Yakuza series of 1 through 6. 6 is coming out in North America in the spring. But Yakuza 0 prequel, completely new story. It wasn't a remaster or anything like that. I loved it. It was like a 30-hour, 35-hour, just beginning to end, just the story was just, I was on the edge of my seat the whole time with all these characters and all the development. It was a little confusing at times. It was, I'll admit, it was just, I had a lot of confusion, but after you sort it all out and try to make sense of all the links between all the characters, because you play as two characters, Kiryu and Majima, and they're in two different cities, so you play like this first part as Kiryu, and then you play another part as Majima, and these stories, these two characters never interact with each other once. They never have any interactions until the very end. So this whole time, you're playing as these two different characters, but the same story. So the characters from Kiryu's world are interacting with characters in Majima's world, and it's just getting so confusing at times because you're like, wait, do they know each other? What's going on here? So it really kept you thinking the whole time, and it's just like a fighting game. You know, you're doing all these karate moves, so it's tons of fun to do all the combat, but it was just a crazy developed story, and I loved playing as the two different characters and trying to figure out what's going on. Then there's a huge just payoff in the last 2 or 3 hours of there's an epic battle that has these two characters in the same place at the same time, and you know, it just all comes. It's almost like a Seinfeld episode. You know, in Seinfeld, how there's all these different, there's 4 story arcs, and they don't really interact, but then at the end, everything comes into one, or a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode. That's what Yakuza 0 was. Everything just came to a head at the perfect time, and it just kind of blew up, and it was like, oh, that was great. It was a great finale. So that is my number 5. I am actually, last night I started Yakuza 1 Kiwami, which is the remaster of the first Yakuza, so I'm really looking forward to digging my hands into that more and getting into that one. So that's my number 5. Whew.
Very nice.
Dave, we are getting into scary territory here.
No, you're correct. I spent my top 10 list. I knocked out 6 through 10. I figured that order out pretty quick. It got really tough. 1 through 4 got really tough.
So
this might come as a shock.
Your number 4. Here we go.
Brace yourself. Number 4, and this is gonna probably catch me a lot of heat from everyone who knows that I love me some Nintendo. But Mario Odyssey is going to be my number 4.
Oof.
I know that thing was close to Game of the Year this year, but unfortunately, there's a couple games on my list that I played this year that came out a couple years ago, and had those games come out this year, I'm not so sure Mario Odyssey would have been in discussion for Game of the Year. So that being said, Mario Odyssey is an instant masterpiece, instant classic. I loved Mario 64, and Odyssey is an extension of that. It's got the Nintendo charm. It's got unique boss fights. It's the real deal. It is worthy of buying a Nintendo Switch for, if for nothing else than for like Mario and the first party stuff. And Odyssey is definitely a good exclusive. And it is like the definitive exclusive right now on the Switch, in my opinion.
I'm so psyched to get my hands on Odyssey. I'm getting that for Christmas, hopefully. Come on, Santa. I've been good. So hopefully,
shout out to the big man.
Hopefully, I get my hands on Odyssey. I don't know if we've said this before or not, but I'm gonna put you on the spot real quick. Where does Odyssey line up for you against Mario 64?
As of right now, I still have a couple
finished
left in Odyssey. Yeah, so I don't want to go out there and say it's like better than 64, and the vibe I'm getting is it's not. but I think it might stand toe to toe with it by the time it's all said and done. If this ending of the game is not a huge monstrosity disappointment, like I felt like 3D World's ending was, I did not like the final boss in 3D World. If they make this final boss right, there's a chance that it is toe to toe with 64.
What does it need to top 64 for you? Can it top 64, or is it like a Matt's Ocarina of Time situation where it's just not going to happen?
Oh, it can. So 64 is, the final boss fight, the Bowser boss fight with the tail grab. It's legendary. It's iconic. This game, if they go throwback and they give you something that is just a tribute to that boss fight, but involves new mechanics, I will say this game is the better game. But it's got to do that. It's got to have that boss fight that just blows your mind, and it's got to include Cappy, and it's got to have some sort of like swinging. I loved the swinging mechanic of the final boss fight in the original Mario 64. So we'll see. As long as I'm not chasing Bowser in a giant car with weird bombs falling behind me and making no sense as a Mario boss, then I'll be happy.
All right, well, I'm looking forward to it. Mario Odyssey, for me, could easily top any Mario game that I've ever played. I have no sense of Mario nostalgia. Like, I don't have any, like, Super Mario World could never be beaten, or Mario 64. Like, I was never a big Mario guy. Like, I liked all the games. I enjoyed them a lot. Obviously, they're just great pieces of gaming history, but I was never like, that was the best game I've ever played. Like, I never said that once. Like, Mario Galaxy, I played this year. I played Mario Galaxy, actually. No, it's not on my top 10. But I remember playing that game, and it got to a point where Peach was like, or someone, I don't think it was Peach, but someone's like, you need 60 more stars to do the final fight. I'm like, oh, come on. That's how I am with Mario. It kind of just gets old for me after a while. But Odyssey, it looks like I'll be entertained the full time, and because it changes enough, and I'm looking forward to it. So my number 4 is Wolfenstein New Colossus. So that is the sequel to New Order. Matt and I did a spoiler episode last episode. We launched that over the weekend. Check it out if you played this game. If not, play it, then check it out. But we did a non-spoiler review on the episode last week. I love this game. I thought it was awesome. Yeah, the combat was a little janky at times, the shooting, aiming people. I won't go too much into that. But other than that, it was a wonderful game. Just the story had me just gripped the whole time, wondering how is this going to develop, because at the beginning of the game, the main character, BJ, he's beat up. He's torn up. It's not looking good. They're kind of hinting at he's not going to make it to see the end of this game. So it's just like, what is going to happen with this character? How are they going to progress from here on out with this character? And, old characters interacting with new characters coming in, and still under the Nazi rule, where you're in America this time, because in New Order, you're still in Europe. So the war is still going over there, but now the game is set in America. So you're under that direct Nazi rule, where it kind of relates to, like, wow, this is New York City and this is under Nazi rule, or it's completely nuked, or I'm in Roswell and there's Nazis everywhere. It's just, it's a world that you can't even imagine, and they put you into that world, and it's awesome.
They got me hooked. I know when we did the review on the episode, I said something to the effect of, I'm for sure going to play this game, and I do plan to play that game, but it's going to be one of them discount games. It'll probably make my top 10 list of 2018.
Yeah, probably. I would be shocked if it didn't. All right, let's go on. Here we go. Top 3 2017 personal games. Top 3. Your number 3, Dave. Shoot.
Hey, Witcher 3 is my number 3. It is number 3, and it is such a good game.
Number 3.
I was giddy like a little schoolgirl today because I got an email that my Witcher 3 Geralt of Rivia statue is coming to put on my computer desk right here next to Rick Grimes and Venom Snake over here, and I'm going to go ahead and say that Witcher 3 is my number 3. And it took me so long to rank my number 2 and 3 because these two games are so near and dear to my heart. The only game that I even would consider better than these on a single player basis is my number 1 game. And if I could do a tie, if I could say I don't have a number 3 and Witcher 3 is my first number 2, I would do it. But as you're going to find out, I have more of a history with my number 2. You already know what it is.
Yep.
And I have a history with that game, and there's something about the history and my love for the dude that makes that game, and I'll get more into that when I talk about it, but there's nothing to dislike about Witcher 3 other than that really terrible glitch that can possibly make you lose 2 hours of game if you don't notice it's going on. The save glitch is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So Witcher 3, aside from the save glitch, is like 1,000 AAA title stories in one game, and you can go and explore all them. I did not get bored with one side quest. Upgrading your armor is a hoot. It is a beautiful game. It is a fantastic game. If you have not played Witcher 3, please at least try it.
I can't believe Witcher 3 is your number 3. I'm shocked.
I know.
I'm shocked.
I know.
Wow. My number 3 is Nier Automata. This game is a platinum developed game, so the makers of Bayonetta, published by Square Enix, more importantly. Some people might forget that this is not just some, small little game. Square Enix put their money behind this game and said, hey, this is going to be a good one. And yes, it was. The way this game is set up, I don't want to go too crazy here, but they set it up where you have to play through the game like 4 or 5 times to understand what the story actually is. So the first playthrough, it gets you to a certain point as one character, and then the second playthrough, it gets you to the same point as a different character. So you're seeing 2 sides of this story from 2 different characters' perspective, and that was really cool. But then the game, your third playthrough, I can't remember the order of the playthroughs, and so I'm not going to embarrass myself trying to remember because, like I said, there's 4 or 5 playthroughs, so it's hard to remember the exact order. But then starting from the end of the first 2 playthroughs, you play the rest of the game, and the story just takes off from there. I know Matt talked about how he didn't like the having to go back and replay the sections. I loved it. I thought that was awesome, going to replay the sections. I saw parts of the story, then I'm like, oh, that's why he was doing this at part of it. Like, while this was going on, that makes perfect sense. I love that part. I would have absolutely no problem going back and playing this game again. Keep in mind, you would be replaying the same section again and again and again. I wouldn't mind, but unfortunately, like, there's just too many other games right now where I don't want to sink another 40 hours into this game just to replay the same thing 5 times. Like, I'll wait a couple years, but this game was so awesome. I love just going on YouTube and just watching or listening to podcasts about other people's kind of take on this story, because there's so much to the story. It's more than just a Bayonetta. Bayonetta's a little bit clearer on what's trying to get done, but Nier Automata, there's so much to this story that it's too much to. That's why they break it into so many different playthroughs, so you can see it from all these different angles and really get an understanding of what is happening here.
Would you say that Matt may have quit playing that game had he not run into so many invisible walls and couldn't escape?
You might have.
Okay, just checking on that.
There's a lot of invisible walls, no doubt. The environment in this game, yes, was extremely lazy. It almost felt like, you know how in some games you can create your own levels, like Tony Hawk, you could create your own levels, and like it's basically like, here, put this same garbage can.
Oh, that's a classic. Tony. And by the way, Tony Hawk 5 was awful. Connor got that game for me, and I was really happy he did because I didn't want to risk my own coin on it.
It was a gag gift.
Oh, goodness. But I'm glad you got it for me, though, because I felt so nostalgic and wonderful for like 5 minutes, and then I was like, what am I playing? What is this? Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Shove it into the garbage.
Yeah.
That's how Nier Automata felt at times with the world that they developed. It felt like a Tony Hawk level creator where, here, use this same model car that you can put everywhere. You know what I'm talking about, Dave? How they always have that.
Yeah.
Or here's the same garbage can or the same railing with the same like faded parts on certain part of it. Like the garbage can was half brown on one part. It's the same thing. That's what I felt like they did. I felt like they just plopped up a couple cars. It was like this Volkswagen model car. The buildings all looked identical. There was invisible walls galore. But as I said 1,000 times on this podcast, I do not care about graphics and stuff like that. Like, yeah, it was annoying. That's why I didn't really push it up to a 9.5 or even a 10 because of those little flaws. But other than that, like, I just pushed that aside and appreciated it for what it was. So that is my number 3. So now, Dave, tell the listeners what is the game? Because I think we all know what your number 1 is. But what is the game that possibly topped Witcher 3 out of its number 2 spot that it locked up over the summer?
Ranking it at my number 2, my man. And I had a history with this franchise. It just gives me those good feelings inside. Whoa! I'm talking about Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. I love the Metal Gear series. Oh man, and I can even tell you, just they did not go wrong in one single place in this game. We talked after my original playthrough about how a lot of people were really upset about how it was not like your typical Metal Gear Solid 5 game. I urge all listeners to go back and listen to my Metal Gear Solid 5 review, as I went into ridiculous depth for the time that I had in the Metal Gear lore. But let's just shoot straight here, man. Gameplay, phenomenal.
Yes, I hold your thought for just 1 second. Metal Gear Solid 5, the engine, the gameplay, that was flawless.
And no hiccups. I did not notice one piece of lag. And this was on Xbox One, which was the inferior version at the time to PS4. Gameplay, flawless. Mm-hmm. Music score, one of the best in any game I've ever played, including the title theme, which is just, it sends chills up my spine just listening to it or thinking about it. The story mode, the story of the game, I know people were criticizing it for being so disjointed and separated, but if you took all those parts and you really immersed yourself in that world and you really saw the value in some of those smaller missions that don't seem to have value, if you really get into the lore, it is rich with story that's just kind of hidden behind that phenomenal make you feel good gameplay. So I'm going to go with Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain. It checked every box off my list except for it just didn't quite beat out the best game I've ever played in my life, which we're going to get to in a second.
Yeah, I'm quite honestly, like you, I played Metal Gear Solid 5 last year, I believe, or maybe 2 years ago. But I'm quite honestly, I'm shocked that this game had such an effect on you, because I thought you wouldn't like the whole setup of missions and it kind of being plopped into the world 35 times. I didn't think you'd like that very much, but I'm shocked that you did, because this game is really great. The engine that it runs on and just the whole gameplay, like, everything's perfect. But then you talked about story, how you said it's a little disjointed if you don't immerse yourself. Well, I didn't immerse myself completely, and I just didn't want to. It's too much. The Metal Gear series is just so much moving parts. There's 5 different versions of Snakes. There's this going on, and it's just a lot going on. We know what we have to do as LAN Partners. We got to get you on a bonus episode for our listeners to just hear you talk for 45 minutes about the Metal Gear.
Metal Gear. Oh boy, no one wants to hear that.
Just explain it, because you got it on lockdown. You even have like a timeline on your phone. Like, you got it all. Before we get into that, let's just go on to my number 2 here. My number 2 is a game that was released last year. This was 10 out of 10 for me, but it unfortunately did not top my number 1. My number 2 is Uncharted 4. Like I said, this game came out last year. For whatever reason, I kind of pushed it off. I think at the time it was $60. I can't justify spending $60 on a 15, 16-hour campaign, and I didn't know it was going to be that long at the time, so I just waited, and I got it for like $20 this year over spring break. This game was perfect. Just absolutely perfect. You can't say anything besides just perfect from this game. The story, and it was a great way to conclude the Uncharted series. I played the whole Uncharted 1, 2, and 3 collection before this, and I played that like late last year, early this year. But Uncharted 4, great conclusion. The storytelling was the best it's ever been. The combat, best it's ever been. Best there was, the best there is, and the best there ever will be. The Uncharted game. Uncharted 4 is my number 2. Let's get into our number 1s. Dave, what is your number 1?
Well, before I get into my number 1, there is something to be said about Naughty Dog, because I did not mention them offhand when I said some of my favorite developers, but they probably fit that category because even though I'm not into the whole Indiana Jones thing, and I don't believe I would appreciate Uncharted as much as you guys do, there's no denying, even just watching gameplay footage, that they just care about their games. It's unbelievable. The Last of Us is one of my favorite games, period, of all time. And Uncharted looks like they put just as much TLC into that game. You know, post-production looks like it was given years to polish. Just well-planned games, thoughtful story, good characters. I mean, that's Naughty Dog, so props to them.
They absolutely put maximum effort into it.
Connor, I got a question for you, and I need you to answer honestly. What developer has the charm, the charisma, and is glorious enough to top out what CD Projekt Red did, and Hideo Kojima, the mastermind of all stories? What developer could capture the hearts of the people? It was, so to speak, the people's champion of developers. Who would be able to top Metal Gear and Witcher? Do you have any idea?
There's only one that I could think of.
There's only one?
There's only one.
It's Nintendo, my friends.
It is Nintendo.
It is Nintendo. They are oozing with charm. They are oozing with machismo. They are the Razor Ramon, DDP, Breath of Hitman Hogan of developers. Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. We did a review on it, and it is the best game I've ever played in my entire life. I've tried to convince myself that I like Metal Gear Solid 5 better at certain times because I have such a long-standing history with Metal Gear, even more so than with Zelda. But I cannot take this away from Nintendo. If you have not played Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, then, I mean, please don't take my word for it. Google Breath of the Wild and try to find something negative about that game. It's really a game that we're going to be talking about 20 years from now and saying like, oh, open world games, man, we really owe a lot to Breath of the Wild for that.
Which is so groundbreaking because the open world genre has already been just so developed. But then for Breath of the Wild to come, and I have not played this game. This is another Santa, please, if you're listening. But this is one of those games that just groundbreaking in an already genre that's already had its ground broken. You know what I mean? Like, it's already been like extremely developed, and then here comes Breath of the Wild knocking over the door. Like, how do they do that?
And I don't know, like we had talked about, I mean, there's shout outs to other developers who do open worlds. Like, I think people generally consider Rockstar Games as like the fundamental open world, like, innovators. And I respect them for that. Like, Grand Theft Auto games may not be my favorite line of games, but there's no denying that people just appreciate the detail and the love that they put into their open worlds. And there's something to be said about a developer that will go to a prison to interview prisoners about making a game about criminals. So they just have a love for the craft, man, and I gotta shoot respect to them. But hot dog, Nintendo nailed it, man. You can't. And here's what impressed me the most. This game came out for the Wii U, and it's almost indistinguishable from the Switch. We're talking about Grand Theft Auto 5, a game that's in full HD, that has so many more assets in the game world itself, feeling emptier than a game that came out on the Wii U. So, I mean, I just can't say enough about Legend of Zelda. It is, I remember reading an interview about the creation of that game and how the original Legend of Zelda is basically like, this is what it was supposed to be. And that vision is a beautiful vision. And it does feel like a garden in your pocket, which is how he described wanting to make it. So fantastic.
Breath of the Wild. Wow.
Top tier list. Come on. You didn't play Breath of the Wild. Tell me, please, what is your number one top game?
My number one top game for 2017 is my number one, like how you were saying Breath of the Wild is the best open world game. Currently, right now, since I have not played Breath of the Wild, this game in my number one spot is the best open world game I have ever played. It does everything very similar to Breath of the Wild, just kind of knocked over old doors that were set up in my own mind. But my number one is Horizon Zero Dawn, a game from the Guerrilla developer who made the Killzone game. So a developer who mastered in first-person shooters. Okay, picture that. Just so picture 343 or someone like that, or Bungie, coming out and saying, we're going to make an open world game. You'd say, okay, like, this is going to be buggy. It's going to be very watered down.
Destiny.
No. Yeah. No, Horizon Zero Dawn, amazing. Absolutely amazing. The world that they set up for it, they just were calling to me like, hey, let's set up this futuristic post-apocalyptic world with robot dinosaurs. How cool is that? You know, like you'd think it just all sounds like, oh, this is going to be kind of lame, you know, like robot dinosaurs. Like, I don't know if I want to see that. Like, no, it's so cool because it's not just your typical dinosaur, like shoot it in the leg and, you know, this kind of thing. You have to find all these weak points and all these robot dinosaurs, and the story unfolds of how humanity got to the point that it is. The only thing about that game though was I talked about this before about the like main mission. Sometimes you kind of just have to sit and listen, like Metal Gear Solid 5. But other than that, like everything was perfect. Like the way the story flowed, understanding the character of Aloy and where she came from and what is she trying to accomplish right now, figuring out why are these robot dinosaurs starting to freak out on us? Well, how did we get here? And Aloy is there to take us away. And I have not played Breath of the Wild, but it's got to be on some close level to Witcher 3 and Breath of the Wild, just right up there. I'm not saying, I know you'll get upset, but I'm not saying it's going to top it or be on the same, but it's got to be right up there with Witcher and Breath of the Wild. And Witcher is another game that I played for about 10 hours. Didn't sync well with me. I don't want to talk about Witcher right now, but Horizon Zero Dawn, my number one game of the year for 2017. So that is it. Horizon Zero Dawn.
That's it, man.
That is it. Before we recap our lists, Matt gave me his list for his 2017. So let me run through his list real fast. His number 10 is Golf Story for the Switch. Number 9, Horizon Zero Dawn. Number 8, Uncharted Lost Legacy. So that's the DLC, which isn't even DLC. It's like an own separate game. But Uncharted Lost Legacy.
DLC.
Number 7 is Final Fantasy 15. Number 6, Wolfenstein New Colossus. Number 5, Yakuza 0. Number 4, The Division.
That is a shocker for me.
Shocker.
Right there.
Big shocker coming in at number 4. Number 3, Mario Odyssey. Number 2, getting the nod over Mario Odyssey, Persona 5. So this is number 2 game, Persona 5. And his number 1, Zelda Breath of the Wild.
No surprise there.
So that is Matt's top 10 of 2017. What do you think about Matt's list?
I think it was missing Tecmo Super Bowl at number 6. And I don't know, there's a couple, like, I wish he was here because I want to ask him what his honest opinion of Golf Story is, because Titanfall 2 got snubbed for that spot. And I'm Matt, if you're listening, what happened to Titanfall 2, baby, man? Come on, show some love to your boy BT. Anyway, no, it's a pretty solid list. I mean, I do appreciate Breath of the Wild being up there. Odyssey's up there. I think my shockers from his list were definitely the Uncharted DLC and Golf Story and The Division. I did not come across as he loved that game as much as number 4 when we talked about it, but I guess he did.
He loved it. He gave it a 9 out of 10. Division was coming in at a 9. So he thought very highly of it. My only shocker out of his list is Golf Story coming in at number 10 and not Titanfall 2 somewhere in the mix. That is my only, like, I know he likes Golf Story, which is fine. I just want to know, like, is it really better than Titanfall 2? Like, I want to have this talk with him. So next time he's on podcast, we'll definitely dissect this a little bit more and let him explain how he kind of came up with his lists, because I'm intrigued between Golf Story and Titanfall 2. That is a big shocker for his list. So let's go ahead and just recap our lists, and then we'll call it a year. What is your list again?
My list is number 10. Oops, hold on. I accidentally shut my list down here. Number 10, Overcooked. Number 9, Tomb Raider. Number 8, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Number 7, Call of Duty Infinite Warfare / Remaster. Number 6, Destiny 2. Terrible things I could say about that. Titanfall 2 is my number 5. Number 4 is Mario Odyssey. Number 3 is Witcher 3. Number 2, Metal Gear Solid 5, the Phantom Pain. And number 1, Zelda Breath of the Game of the Universe, best of all time, Wild.
Nice. My number 10, For the NES Classic, Star Tropics. Number 9, Titanfall 2. Number 8, DMC Devil May Cry. Number 7, Bioshock Infinite. Number 6, Wolfenstein New Order. Number 5, Yakuza 0. Number 4, Wolfenstein New Colossus. Number 3, Nier Automata. Number 2, Uncharted 4. And number 1, Horizon Zero Dawn. So that is our 2017 all wrapped up. It's just such a great year for gaming. There are so many games from 2017 that I didn't even touch yet, including Odyssey and Breath of the Wild. I plan on playing those next year, but it's been quite a year. Do you have any closing thoughts on 2017 before we sign off? And just so our listeners know, we will be taking the next couple weeks off. We'll be coming back early January, so just so everyone's aware of that.
2017, man. I mean, I've said it before, and with playing the certain games that I elected to play this year is easily my best single-player gaming year in probably the history of gaming for me. I mean, I played Witcher 3, Metal Gear Solid 5, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild in the same year, so it was stacked. I felt my head was spinning after playing those 3 games in the same, like, essentially the same 3-month span.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's a large load coming at you of all those 3 games, man. That's a heavy amount of gaming right there. So that is our 2017. Let us know what you thought of our personal lists. Thank you, Dave, for joining me on the final episode of 2017. It's been a good year. I will see you next year. Thank you so
Indeed.
much. Thank you so much for listening. See you next year.